Today is Thursday, April 2nd, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. America heading back to the moon. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can email us as well. Our email address is quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. Glad you're here with us. We're here bright and early each and every weekday getting through the news of the day. With me today, CBN's Trey Phillips and Madison Seals. There's a lot going on today. On the focus story, we're taking a look at something Chick-fil-A is doing to help people unplug from their phones. That is an epidemic we know is gripping all of us, and we've got to turn it around. So Madison's got more on what Chick-fil-A is doing to help on that front. And on the main thing, another deadly wave of violence targeting Christians in Nigeria. And the attacks are escalating, but the world is barely noticing. Raj has more on that coming up on the main thing. I'll tell you about our sponsor for this podcast, Christian Solidarity International. As we just mentioned there, they're ramping up in Nigeria. That's one of the places CSI is working on the ground. Long term, they've got people there building relationships with pastors, because when these things happen and these attacks happen, you have to have the relationships. You have to know the people that are involved here, the pastors who are shepherding those Christians in life day to day, in order to help them rebuild and to help people who are in dire need. And that is exactly what CSI does. They are there providing some real tangible aid to make sure their stories don't disappear, even though the mainstream media isn't coming alongside to help. You can help shine a light where the world isn't looking. Learn more at csi-usa.org/quickstart. csi-usa.org/quickstart if you feel called to get involved. And we're going to go to the news now in 90 seconds. And President Trump addressed the nation last night, calling Iran no longer a threat. As he says the U.S. campaign is nearing the finish line. President Trump said after 32 days of Operation Epic Fury, the U.S. has largely dismantled Iran's military capabilities, claiming its navy is gone, its air force is crippled, and missile stockpiles nearly depleted. He told Americans the mission is nearing completion, with final strikes expected over the next 2 to 3 weeks to fully eliminate remaining threats. Trump emphasized the goal was never regime change, but noted Iran's leadership has effectively been wiped out and replaced with what he described as a less radical group. Gas prices have risen above $4 per gallon, but the president called the spike temporary, blaming Iranian attacks on oil routes and predicting that prices will drop once the Strait of Hormuz stabilizes. He also defended past decisions, highlighting his withdrawal from Obama's Iran nuclear deal and arguing it prevented Tehran from developing nuclear weapons. And humans are heading back to the moon for the first time in over 50 years. NASA's Artemis II mission has officially launched, sending 4 astronauts on a 10-day journey that'll loop around the moon and return to Earth. Those are the big top stories. You can check out more over at cbnnews.com. And this, if you missed it, was incredible. The CBN News YouTube channel carried video of this. You can check that out on the CBN News YouTube channel. If you missed it, you want to go back and watch some. It was something that snuck up on a lot of people. They almost didn't know it was coming, and there wasn't a lot of fanfare around it, but the crew included 3 NASA astronauts and 1 from Canada. And this is a big international step towards space exploration, something that's been kind of dormant for decades. This mission's not going to land on the moon, but it is a critical test run for future missions that could take astronauts further from Earth than ever before. So what they're doing is they're going to conduct systems checks, they're going to practice maneuvers, and perform a close flyby of the moon before heading home. The last time humans traveled this close to the moon was 1972, and officials say this mission signals a renewed push driven by government, private industry, and global partners to return in a lasting way. All right, we're going to go to the focus story now. And as we mentioned at the top there, Chick-fil-A once again kind of doing something that kind of goes against the grain of how culture's going. And Now they're offering customers free ice cream if they unplug during their meal. Tell me what's going on here.
Yeah, leave it to Chick-fil-A to teach family values with a challenge. This is happening at a Chick-fil-A in Maryland. And essentially, this restaurant is incentivizing families to be phone-free during their meals. It's called the Cell Phone Coop Challenge, and they advertised it on their Facebook page. The post says, take the dine-in cell phone coop challenge at Chick-fil-A Towson Place. Ask a team member for a coop, place all phones in the coop, and enjoy your meal together without distractions. When your table finishes, let a team member know, and everyone will receive an ice stream cone as a reward. And the post includes a picture of the sign and this little white cardboard chicken coop that you can put your phone in and place it on silent, which is a very creative way of encouraging more sincere, genuine family time. And if the phones stay inside the box for the entire meal, diners get a free ice cream dessert, which is just a bonus on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, how did this idea come about? I mean, people have long noticed in society that, at meals and stuff, people are kind of mindlessly scrolling on their phones. But what prompted Chick-fil-A to want to take action right now?
So there was actually a Chick-fil-A restaurant in Georgia that did this about 10 years ago. Someone by the name of Brad Williams, who at the time owned two of the restaurants in Georgia, created the challenge after watching a mom spend basically her entire meal with her two kids playing on her phone instead of communicating with them. And now, obviously, we don't know her circumstances, and maybe in her case, she was dealing with a family challenge or something, but the principle of the initiative is important because this is a common scene anywhere you look. And there's no denying that we're addicted to our phones, and now children are watching us and becoming addicted to screens too. Even a 2023 study found that 68% of households have a person using their phone during a meal with others. And it also found that 65% of respondents don't like this, and 42% feel that it's rude to use phones during meals. So even though it's common, people would rather it not be that way. And I think it's a challenge for many, but it's definitely one worth encouraging and doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just had this funny scenario in my house because my wife's phone broke. So it was like this whole ordeal to get her another phone. So she basically went a few days without having a phone. And so it was interesting to see her try to integrate back into society here with no phone while everyone else has a phone. So there were just like hassles, times you couldn't reach her and things like that we're so used to now. And those things are like the good things about phones, that you can communicate with somebody quickly when you need to. You need to find out where they're at, what time they're going to be home, those sorts of things. The bad thing is what you were talking about there, Madison, is that people stare on the phones. And what message are you sending as a parent? And we're all guilty of this, so I'm not preaching at parents here. I know I've done this many times, but you feel convicted about it when, your kids are kind of sitting in the same room as you, and then you're just staring at the phone, scrolling on the phone. I mean, you're signaling that whatever you're staring at on your phone is more important than building your relationship with your kids. So I can see why Chick-fil-A values this and is trying to do something about it.
Right. Yeah. There's no denying there's benefits to having access to information quickly when you need it. But I think we've gotten to the point where we're too reliant on that. It's too easy to pick it up and look at information instead of really connecting and conversating with the people around you. And it's hard to go deep on your phone too. So there's just more surface level interactions going on when you're so focused on your phone versus the people in front of you.
Yeah, I was looking up some data just because obviously I think we're all aware in 2026 that pretty much all of us use our phones too much. I think that's kind of a given now when a restaurant is offering to give full-blown adults free ice cream if you'll just put your stinking phone down. So I think, I think I'm not at all dragging Chick-fil-A. I think it's great to incentivize good habits in a culture where we're constantly incentivized to have bad habits. So definitely kudos to Chick-fil-A. But some of the numbers that I saw is, according to Gallup, 58% of American smartphone users believe they spend too much time on their phones. What's interesting, though, is that younger adults, those 18 to 29, 81% of them say they spend too much time on their smartphones, and those 30 to 49, 74% of them say they spend too much time on their smartphones. So we're like abundantly aware that this is an issue. So it is encouraging to see things like this, and even things like Brick, that little thing you can get that you tap your phone to, and it turns off all your social media apps for a time being. So I think it's great that there are companies like Chick-fil-A incentivizing this. There's apps and devices that we can get that are kind of trying to help us navigate. Okay, we all have these things in our pockets, and they do have a lot of benefits. There's a lot of conveniences that we don't necessarily want to give up, but we need to be better stewards of the technology that we carry around with us all day long. So, and one other thing that I'll just throw out there, because I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, is I don't know if either one of y'all are aware of this conspiracy theory that things are not as vibrant, colorful, color-wise in the world. The world has become more dull since it was in our childhood, and I am convinced that that's because of screens. We're staring at screens all day long, and the colors are super vibrant. So the Earth, real life, looks more dull. I think, man, we really should just get off of our phones if we really think that the world is so dull.
Yeah. So you're saying Earth is like low res?
Yeah, basically, that's what the people on Reddit are saying. The Earth has become low res in the 2020s.
Yeah, I mean, I could see some of that. What I find super interesting here is that we really are a pioneer generation with technology. We don't know the true we know it's generally not good to be staring at your phone 24/7, right? But how much is okay? And what are we doing to ourselves? This is the first generation. I mean, I grew up, I went to school in the 1990s, and cell phones didn't even exist. Nobody had them until I think close to 2000, after I'd already been out of school. And so, I got to experience growing up in that way where people interacted and you had to talk face to face. It was the only way you could do it. And so we have a whole new generation now that are growing up, being able to be completely isolated. And it's really weird. I mean, it's just a completely new territory. I mean, I don't know how, you guys are obviously a little older than the kids that are going through school now or just out of school. And I noticed with my kids, like, they're not even rushed to get their driver's licenses. Like, they're kind of like, I'm going to get around to it. I remember, because there were no phones and you wanted to get out and connect, like, getting your license was such a huge deal. It was such a moment to be able to grab onto some freedom where you could say, I'm going to take the car and go hang out with my friends. Whereas I guess people maybe feel that need sort of filled because they're on their phone all the time. So there are just interesting things like that going on, and we don't really know how it's impacting us as a culture long term.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about this before on here, that this is the most connected generation and yet the loneliest generation that struggles with anxiety and depression and so many other things at these skyrocketing rates. And it's interesting that, like you pointed out, Trey, that so many of them recognize that they're overconnected and that they'd like to use their phones less. And maybe it's just that they know how to use their phones more than some of the older generations, that they're so addicted to so many different things on it that just sucks them in. And so I think, there's a desperation for connecting with real people across the table from you. And back in 2016, when Brad implemented this at his store, within a couple months, there was over 10,000 coops across Chick-fil-A stores. So I'm curious what that would be now if this kind of picks up pace again and starts spreading, how quickly that'll happen. Because even a small ritual, like you said, Trey, rewarding adults with ice cream for putting their phones in a little coop could help create a habit that prioritizes family time and face-to-face conversations over time.
Yeah. I mean, and listen, maybe at some point it'll become taboo in culture to be scrolling on your phone and, while you're at dinner with somebody else, and it'll be considered rude. Man, these are things that hopefully evolve over time, and, the addictive nature of the phones, hopefully we start to recognize that culturally in our interactions with one another. And, we'll see if that trend changes in any way, because, again, we don't really know what we're doing to ourselves, though we know a lot of it's probably not good. But interesting stuff. Glad Chick-fil-A is doing it. Appreciate you bringing it to the podcast today. All right, we're going to go to the main thing now, and we're getting new troubling details out of Nigeria, where Christian communities are once again under siege in brutal attacks. CBN's Raj Nair sits down with Truth Nigeria to break down what's happening on the ground, who's behind the violence, and why these assaults continue to intensify. That report is today's main thing.
Nzawane Onwuka, a reporter for Truth Nigeria, is here to report about the massacres of Christians in Nigeria. And what can you tell us?
All right. So, recently, the latest attack that happened in Nigeria was on Sunday, which happened to be Palm Sunday. And like you know, Palm Sunday is a very significant religious day for Christians in Nigeria. So on that day, there were two deadly attacks in north central and northwestern Nigeria, mainly the areas that are Christian populated. So the first attack was between 7 and 8 p.m. local time in Jos, Plateau State, the Plateau State capital city, and an unspecified number of persons were killed. They were massacred. I say unspecified because there are conflicting number of death toll. Some Nigeria media reports say 27, some say it's at least 40. The police say it's 12. And more to now, also, there is no group that has come out to claim responsibility for the attack, and there's no official statement to that effect, that is, that has revealed the identity of the attackers. However, a Truth Nigeria report to that effect said that it is Boko Haram terrorists and not the usual, Fulani ethnic militia. So now this attack is particularly disturbing because a similar attack happened on Palm Sunday last year in the same Plateau State, which claimed 54 lives. So, and because of that, you might think that one begins to wonder whether it is a pattern, you know. So that's just it. And the second attack happened just in neighboring Kaduna State in northwestern Nigeria, a Christian area, largely Christian area. 13 wedding guests were killed and several others were abducted after bandits interrupted a wedding ceremony just a few minutes to midnight. And the attacks, I think they happened like 3 hours apart. So on that day, Sunday, can say that there were two attacks on a significant religious day across two states in Nigeria. So that's the latest attack that's happened in Nigeria.
Well, my friend, what do you say to some people inside your own government that say that there is no genocide against Christians in Nigeria?
People who say there's no genocide in Nigeria base their arguments on the fact that Muslim and Christian communities suffer the attacks alike. However, that view may overlook what genocide actually means. And then for clarity, genocide is the systematic killing or destruction of a group, whether religious, cultural, or ethnic group. Now, when you look closely at what is happening in parts of Nigeria's middle belt, particularly in Plateau and in Benue states, there is a consistent pattern of attacks on specific communities, many of them predominantly Christian communities. And curiously, these attacks often intensify during religious periods like Christmas and Easter. All right, see now, there have been two Palm Sunday massacres in 2 years. Now it makes you wonder if it has become a pattern, just like I said before. Because believe it or not, it is not a coincidence that attacks happened in Palm Sunday 2025 and another happened in 2026. For me, it's not a coincidence because these attacks are usually targeted and well coordinated. Raj, I'm sure you are aware that 2023 Christmas was very terrifying for Plateau people. The Fulani terrorists overran more than 15 communities across three different local governments between December 23rd and Christmas Day 2023, killing over 100 people with at least 300 terribly injured. Now, in neighboring Benue State is the same sad tale of mass killings. The Yelewata massacre of June 20, 2025, where more than 100 persons were killed in Benue is still fresh in memory. Now, with these high figures of casualties, one would be mistaken to regard it as common insecurity, just like the government or maybe other Nigerians who want to believe. But then it has gone beyond that. The level of mass killings and daily bloodshed being witnessed has gone beyond farmer elder crisis. So why? Why do I say so? Because these terrorists, they are bent on wiping out these Christian communities in these states. From their mode of operation, this is evident. They not only kill, they burn houses and farmlands, leaving the survivors nothing to fall back on, but to leave community and live in abandoned schools and buildings that have been turned to IDP camps. So fresh attacks give rise to new arrivals in these IDP camps, and these terrorists, I'm telling you, right, they are not stopping anytime soon. They are intent on depopulating these communities.
Well, Nzawane, my friend, thank you so much for your insight. God bless and stay safe.
I appreciate that. And we're going to have time on the podcast today for one last thing.
Well, talking about being wise stewards of the things we have in our lives, we're looking at Colossians 3, verses 23 and 24. It says, "Work willingly at whatever you do, as though you are working for the Lord rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will give you an inheritance as your reward, and that the master you are serving is Christ."
Yeah, this is a great reminder that our standard is the Lord. People will discourage us and frustrate us, but it's not them that we're working for. So our attitude should remain the same.
Yeah. And no matter where you're at. Yeah, exactly. Like you have something, like people get frustrated with their jobs, for example, right? And then they, can be grumpy or whatever in a bad mood. But you see this verse and it's like, listen, wherever you're at, like you do it as though you were working for the Lord, and you're going to, be blessed by that. And so that's something that maybe might convict you at where you're at right now. Maybe you're not content with the situation you're in right now, but remember Colossians 3, 23 and 24. All right, so we're going to leave it on this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. As always, get on over to cbnnews.com, faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. We'll see you back here tomorrow with more.